We are sponsoring this session, this 90-minute session, as basically an introduction, an overview, especially for people that are either new to Mexican American Studies or novices, are interested in presenting it, or just want information you've never heard or known much about it. Those of you that are experienced in it, it'll probably be a little bit of a already well-known set of facts, but we're hoping to make it a very interesting and participatory session today. We have throughout the afternoon, we're going to have several presenters. Some will be joining. They're already joining us right now. I'll be kicking off with a warm up, but we're going to have Dr. Liliana Patricia Saldaña from the University of Texas San Antonio with us. You already heard Gilbert. He's a high school teacher at Breckenridge High School with the San Antonio Independent School District. And Araceli Manriquez is going to join us. She's with the Bonham I think it's a K-8 school, okay, with SAISD. So these are our objectives for today. First of all, our broad goal is just essential information and support for Mexican American Studies teachers. And as I said, some of you might already know this or have a different take on the outline. This is at least a good set of basic ideas on MAS. And starting off after the warm-up, we're going to look at the importance of teaching MAS, and Dr. Saldaña will be working through us. She might change some of the bullets on screen. I told each presenter they had 5 to 7 minutes on this. Everybody's very, very busy, but the content comes from work that I've already been doing with several of them. Then we're going to focus on how you can make MAS student-centered and driven. That's inherently motivated in how you teach, in this case, adolescents, high school students. We're focusing on the high school student, although the information is going to be applied pre-K through first year of college. And then part of a big chunk of time is going to be spent actually examining some lessons, because one of the things that IDRA is doing with this presentation, we want you to become familiar with a site that we have created. We've been working on it for 3 or 4 years now. We've got over 140 lessons in it. Some have been very carefully developed. Some have been submitted to us by practicing teachers. And so what you're going to do is you're going to be in small groups actually investigating one lesson. Each of us will be in a small group. I'll be in one, Dr. Saldaña in another, Mr. Flores and Araceli Manriquez will each manage a small group. The size will depend on how many people join us eventually. As I said, we have over 40 signed up for it. And so we're hoping that it is a useful and practical, but again, it's just a taste. It's una probadita. If anybody's more interested, close to the end of the session, Dr. Saldaña is going to talk about resources that exist and that she is managing and been leading for quite a few years, and that I've been participating with. And so you're going to find out, if you really want to become an expert, if you really want good information for the long haul, just having lessons that you can access is not nearly enough. And obviously, Dr. Saldaña, as a master teacher trainer, can work with you on that. She's not only trains hundreds of teachers in MAS, but she's actually taught some of these courses for high school students as a dual language course. So she has that broad experience. And I also been a teacher since 1964. I started introducing culture activities in my English class in 1967, right about the time your grandparents were starting to date. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So this is setting the climate, You will be going to some jam boards that we've created so that we can have your input and participate in it. Oh, here's our other presenter. Okay, so Michelle, they're going to have the link in the chat. Is that where it's going to be? Let me introduce Michelle Vega. She's our technical expert, and she helped me design this whole thing because I'm a killer with technology. Okay, so you're going to go to this page, and I want you, when you're on your Jamboard page, on the left, there's little icons. There's one, you take your cursor and go to where the stickies are, the little sticky notes. They're just little squares. You bring it onto the screen. It'll open up with a color band. And I want you to just write down several stickies in terms of when I say culture, what comes to mind, 3 to 5 words, and just and fill it. You can make 3, 5, 10 of those stickies. Just start filling the Jamboard with, when you hear the word culture, what comes to mind? What are some terms? What are definitions? What does it bring up for you? So as people are joining us, click on the Jamboard link in the chat, and just put stickies on this wall. Everybody can participate. Let's fill it up with, when you hear the word culture, what comes to mind? Good. Self-discovery, pride, language and identity, levels and tiers to culture, surface, shallow, deep. Culture, what comes to mind? So we had faith in religious beliefs, how we relate to people, identity, attacks and resistance, pride, culture, what comes to mind? Culture, what comes to mind? I've had as many as 100 different things put up on this activity that are not repetitive. Is there anybody that joins us that doesn't know what we're doing? Just let us know. We're doing a kind of a brainstorm on culture. What words come to mind? Okay, we have pride, self-discovery, and having a voice in the chat. This activity for many years in many different ways, not just for training teachers, but with adults in leadership program, young people trying to explore. The older the audience, the greater variety of and nuances of culture come out. So if you go to page 2, if we were doing this as a full activity, I would have like each of these is a page. You're going to see them again. But we've got formal, deep, situational, language communications, humanistic values, and historical. Many years ago, a friend of mine who was one of the leaders in bilingual education, this is about 50 years ago here in San Antonio, Josue Gonzalez, he eventually went to teach in Arizona. And Josue, when he did his dissertation, he was very much thinking about, in those days when we talked about bilingual education, it was bilingual, bicultural education. He said, but colleges aren't teaching us about culture. So he did some research, he got some stuff together. Obviously, much more has been done since then, but this framework has been very useful for people to start organizing their thinking, especially if you're a teacher who's trying to organize your curriculum and your lessons. Here are 6 levels of culture that are important, because we know that only a couple of them are in our history of how we are taught about history and culture, how we're trained about it. And so it already starts opening it up as a framework. Okay, so let's go back to the slide, the warm-up slide. What you're going to do is, I want you to first of all think of 1 or 2 memories when you were 6 or younger that are fond memories of growing up with your family, either a happening, a tradition, a relationship, a memorable incident, just you when you were a child, okay? And think about those 2. And then we're going to go back to the same Jamboard, a new Jamboard, and you're going to write those in 3 to 5 words, each one, if you thought of 1, if you thought of 2, and put them on the Jamboard. So let's have the Jamboard link for the second Jamboard. And here's where you will put stickies of your memories from the age of 6 or earlier. Because I'd have you in pair sharing with each other and then sharing in the large group your memories. That's a good one, camaradas. Any memory will do it. You don't have to think about what's cultural. It's just whatever the memory is of a tradition in your family, or an event that you've never forgotten, a positive event. Oh, the old Alameda, that used to be so pretty, I remember. I used to come my aunt would bring me to San Antonio from Laredo, and we would go there to movies with Jorge Negrete and the old black and white Mexican movies. Cantinflas. Okay, does anybody else have another thought you want to share, another memory? You can tell us verbally right now. In other words, say what your memory was and what level of culture would it go in? You need to open your mics. The Guanajuato memory, where would that go?
I was just looking at that. I think it would be not only relationships and deep, but also with language and communication.
Right. Yeah.
We
Very
did a
strong.
lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very strongly in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Okay. Another memory. Gilbert, did you do one? Valerie just joined us. Valerie, we are if you go to the chat, Valerie, there's a link to we're looking at a Jamboard that is not on the screen. You have to be in the Jamboard. We're looking at levels of culture.
Yes, yes. I wrote down, I was trying to click it and I accidentally exited out of Zoom. Sorry, but I wrote down the Sunday barbecues where my family, well, they would barbecue, but all of us would get together and then they would watch, football and then we would play. So um maybe the situational, like because here
Yeah,
we see some kind of intergenerational,
right,
multi-generational
right.
gatherings, right? So maybe situational.
But also in deep as friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. Okay. Um, what this does, we obviously not going to go in depth, is you start seeing, especially if you're a new teacher to this, how you can look at very broadly the different categories and start thinking about which are the ones that I really haven't done before. Because one big question we ask in a workshop that's just focusing on this is whatever was taught before in a social studies class, for example, or a civics class, which are the ones that are usually taught is the historical, a little bit about the formal, in terms of the literary landmarks and stuff like that. But then I ask you, in terms of you and your life and your culture, which levels are most important to you about your culture? And it rarely would somebody say historical or formal, language and communications, humanistic values, deep and situational. So it's just to point out that our preparation for a class like this really has to go beyond what has been formally taught to train teachers in social studies and history and language arts and stuff, but also it shows that we have to dig into our own history, our own past, to understand why these are important and how we help the students look at that and investigate that. Okay, let's go back to the slide presentation. So, Dr. Saldaña, are you with us? What I'd like to do is, first of all, say that Dr. Liliana Saldaña, for those that don't know, has a very deep and strong history, not just in Mexican American studies, but in making sure that an institution represents these well and supports them. She's trained many, many people to teach these classes, but also is constantly expanding her own experience. She's doing stuff with food right now that is going in a very strong direction. But she's also the lead in the team for the academy that we have every summer in June, the Mass Academy. She'll say more about that close to the end of the session. But I just want to welcome her to be with us. And Liliana, it's yours.
Thank you so much, Aurelio. What an honor to share space with you and our amazing and dedicated mass community. Más o menos, ¿cuánto tiempo tengo? Como
5 to 7, 5 to
7 minutes. Okay. So, so Mexican American Studies is, it's a field that's been around for many decades. It is the result of student activism and the support of educators and community members, but every time I think of the history of MAS or Chicanx studies, Chicano studies, Chicana studies, Chicanx studies, I think of the students that walked out in California. I think of the students and the faculty and the educators that came up with the blueprint for Chicano studies. Here in the state of Texas, it's recognized by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board as Mexican American Studies. But I think about El Plan de Santa Bárbara, which laid out the philosophical framework of Mexican American Studies that includes these major themes of identity and inclusion and reimagined education and also academic achievement. And I also think about the logistical, I would say, issues and vision that the students wanted to implement MAS, right? So if you want to implement classes that fit within this framework of Mexican American Studies, you obviously need the support, for faculty hires, to hire teachers to teach these courses, in our high schools. You need the support of the administrators. You need the resources, right? The funding, basically the institutional infrastructure and the institutional resources to teach Mexican American Studies. So here in Texas, MAS is like a 50+ year dream, because we know that students here in San Antonio at Edgewood walked out because of the deplorable underfunding of their schools. We know that students at Lanier who had planned to walk out and they were organizing a walkout were demanding classes on Mexican American history and Mexican American culture, right? They weren't calling it Mexican American Studies then. They weren't calling it Chicano Studies, but they were very clear that they wanted courses where they could learn about their history, where they could learn about their identities, where they could see themselves reflected in the curriculum. So MAS is very much a field of ethnic studies. It is a field created by the Mexican American community, by the scholars, the researchers. It's taught by our educators. It's taught by everyone who's committed to ensuring that students in our communities know their histories, and I would say most importantly that they are rooted in who they are, and that they are propelled to contribute to their communities and to the issues of social justice. I would say the most pressing issues of social justice at the local level, but also at the global level, right? So MAS is connected to global issues of social justice. MAS is connected at the local level as well. So MAS is really dedicated to identity, right? Ensuring that our students have a clear sense of who they are. One of the hallmarks of Mexican American Studies is reclaiming cultural identities, right? It is about creating spaces in the classroom where students of color, where Mexican American students are able to investigate their ancestral knowledge, where it acknowledges that students have been deculturalized by hundreds of years of colonialism. And what this means in our schools is that students have been stripped of their racial and ethnic identities. And to borrow from La Doctora Angela Valenzuela, right, the concept of subtractive schooling, which is a very dehumanizing process. And we know from our history that, students in US schools have been deculturalized, right? They've been punished for speaking Spanish. Their names have been anglicized. They've confronted this very sort of white stream curriculum. So MAS creates spaces that validate students' familial and community histories, and that's really important. The other theme has to do with inclusion, right? So creating spaces where students feel like they belong, right? And I'm thinking of Dr. Cintly Rodriguez's book, Que en paz descanse, he wrote his book on maíz, right? And the whole purpose of his research was to ensure that we have a sense of belonging to this continent, right? So no matter what our citizenship status is, that people in our community should feel a sense of safety and belonging. And so MAS creates that sense of belonging through student-centered pedagogies, by creating spaces where students can write their counter narratives, right? And these are perspectives that come from communities of color, that come from the students. So you create a sense of belonging when we're able to create spaces where students can offer their own standpoint, right? Their own historical accounts and their own interpretations that question these dominant narratives. And it's creating a space where students can, where we can reroute as teachers, right? In community with our students, can reroute a curriculum and ancestral knowledge and traditions. So that's definitely an important value of Mexican American studies. The other one is reimagined education. You know, I think of the work of Paulo Freire, who wrote the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, where he challenges and he presents sort of like this colonial framework on education and this anti-colonial framework of education. And so MAS, right, MAS creates a space where we can reimagine, even as educators, right? But also for our students, where we can reimagine an education that is not based on this colonial system of memorization, regurgitation, but where students are really reimagining and actually experiencing what it's like to actually learn and be transformed by that process of learning and teaching in the classroom. And so MAS pushes us, right, even as educators, to reimagine what the teaching and learning experience can be like, you know, not just for our students, but also for ourselves, in a way that rehumanizes us, in ways that affirms our ability to think critically, to be inspired, and I think most importantly, to dream of the kind of world that we want to live in. The other hallmark or principle of Mexican American studies is, you know, academic achievement. You know, we are committed to ensuring that our students thrive in their learning. We know from research on Mexican American studies, I'm thinking of the case study that came out of Tucson, Arizona, after the banning of MAS. There was a case study research on the benefits of MAS, and we know that when students take one MAS class at the high school level, that they do exponentially better than students who have never taken a Mexican American studies course. We know from that research that students who take 2 to 3 MAS classes in high school do even better than students who've only had access to 1 MAS class, right? And so forth. So we know that students excel in their scholarship. We know that students excel academically. And they not only excel in their MAS classes, they're excelling in non-MAS related courses like math, language arts, and reading. So MAS is dedicated to creating those spaces for academic achievement for our students, right? Where students feel rooted in their learning, where they feel proud of what they're learning, and where they can then think about the many ways, right? Where they can reimagine the many ways in which they can bridge the academic knowledge that they're learning in schools with their communities, right? So how can they translate everything that they're learning into something that's going to actually be useful for their communities and for the larger world? And so those are just some of the characteristics of Mexican American studies, but, you know, and these are, and basically the same characteristics that we teach in higher education when we're looking at like MAS curriculum. So, you know, MAS curriculum in higher education is very much the same, right? We want students to understand the structural and historical context of the life, history, and culture of Mexican origin people. We want students to learn methods of inquiry, right, and research, and it's really just about digging and asking questions about power. We want to create spaces that affirm our students' racial, ethnic, and cultural identities, and the ways in which these courses can increase their retention in school, can increase their persistence in school, and can then get them to graduate and matriculate into colleges and universities and to continue on, right? So I don't know if I have a little bit more time, but I'd be...
No, thank you,
Yes.
Lily. We'll move on. I'm going to have to shorten the time you go into the lessons, but I think everybody has, because we're going to have dialogue time. But thank you very much, Lily. I know I forced you to tighten up everything. It's for all our presenters. We're going to move now to the next presenter. And Gilbert, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm right here. So you're
Okay.
gonna hear a lot of ruckus, right? Because class is about to end in 3 minutes, and these kids are gonna stampede out of here like some vacas on a mission.
But I think that it's wonderful that you're in the context where you're teaching this subject and speak to us.
Excuse me. So one of the staples in my Mexican American Studies class is building relationships and honoring the whole person that is in my classroom, right? So my first 2 weeks of class are not going to be about like what you can and can't do in my class. They're not going to be about consequences and disciplinary actions. They're going to be about who my students are, what are their cultural values. You know, you talked about culture a little while ago, and in our classroom we built a culture tree. So I try to figure out like, where are my students at surfacely? What kind of foods do they like? What do they do in their leisure time? And this is all very surface level, so that isn't going to really create like a bond between my students. But then we move deeper into their shallow and their deep cultures and some of the ways that their experiences in life have caused them to act in certain situations. And so I bring that into the class because I want to honor who they are, right? And so that kind of leads to journal writing. My sister Liliana talked about Freire, right, and try to reimagine education. And I think like sometimes education has been capitalized, right? We look at students as objects or as vessels ready to be filled with prescriptions of TEKS and standards. And to kind of to disrupt that, what I like to do is just have my kids write freely. I think about my own liberating experiences in class in high school. And one of my favorite classes was Mrs. Burnaby's English class. She let us journal about anything, about what was going on in our life, how we felt. She let us recite poetry every Friday. And that meant a lot to me because that really reinforced my love for literacy and music. And I want to create that space where we can honor what students' multiple intelligences are. So yeah, journal writing lets me know like what's going on with my kids, right? I don't want to just know you know how you're doing in your classes. I want to know how you're doing as a person. That means a lot to me. Reflection and dialogue. We had a reflection and dialogue today, and Dr. Encarnacion Garza at UTSA showed me this this strategy where basically after we learn a topic, everybody says one thing that they learned, and nobody in the first round talks about or agrees with or disagrees with. We just make it a purpose to humanize the space by putting phones away, listening, and honoring each other, right? And so everybody shares one thing that they learned, whatever it is that they learned, and then afterwards we'll have like a little plática. The reflection and dialogue is just honoring my students and their voices. I see sentence for each key idea. That's just a reminder to give you. Okay, yeah. So I hope that I didn't go over any time, but that's kind of how I.
And we'll have
those
a
are the staples
dialogue.
of my class.
That was very good. It's just such an honor that you're in the middle of your class with your students still there doing this, Gilbert. Thank you very much. Okay, so then our third short presentation. Araceli has been at Bonham. How many years, Araceli? She's been
about 10. Yes, about 10.
And she's been working with it's a K8 school, and she's going to share with us her experience and her focus in terms of cross-cultural, cross-curricular framework. Go for it.
Thank you. Thank y'all for being here. Yeah, no, so math can be anywhere, right? I'm blessed enough, that we at Bonham have a math class. But if you don't have the resources to have a specific course for math, what's lovely is you can integrate it anywhere, really. I mean, from kinder through high school, you can incorporate it in any subject. This takes a little bit of extra work, but I promise you it's worth it, and a little extra support, and hopefully you have that extra support at your district. So for example, this year I am teaching also reading, RLA, and seventh grade social studies into a language, which is Texas history. And those classes have really lent themselves to be a very math-centered course, which is great because of maybe the literature that you choose, maybe the different primary sources that you choose to show your kids, you know, maybe the different perspectives and different things that you throw in there. So when we were in elementary, we would use all sorts of things, even for math, even for science, right? Place value is huge in 5th grade. And so why don't we learn a little Mayan math and how they also, you know, use place value? Why don't we, you know, learn about mixtures and solutions using a like fruteria reference? And so like we would make our own little fruteria in class. It was great. And this year, like in my reading class, for example, I've been able to use literature circles. We've been reading Carmen Tapoya's book, Warrior Girl, which we have a whole set of lesson plans for. And we've been really, really enjoying it. Like the kids really, really have enjoyed reading a book in class together that relates to their life experience. So that's been great. And it's, you know, we, you know, Bonham is great at promoting our, you know, our classes. And so they'll use our social media to promote the field trips that we do. And, you know, in San Antonio, we have such a great place here. We are able to go to the Guadalupe Center or the Esperanza Center or different murals. We love doing mural walks in our classes as well. And it's just such a chance for students to get creative in that space. So my brief.
No, that's good. You know, we had a Saturday on Jovita. How long ago was that, Lily, that you sponsored it? 3 Saturdays ago, right?
Yeah, about 2 Saturdays.
Yeah, we've had quite a few things going on around Jovita, and I'm glad because Laredo people are brilliant and they always have done great things. And so, but we had both Gilbert and Araceli present in great detail how they were using it in class. And I remember they gave examples. Araceli even showed us the feedback where the students give her feedback and write stuff about it. So what I wanted the participants to see is that here are 3 huge important resources, human resources here in San Antonio: Dr. Saldaña, Gilbert, Araceli, and the 3 of them will remain in San Antonio. You will have ability to connect with them in the future because I squeezed them into a very short period of time so I could have the 3 of them, but you know that any one of them could do the full 90 minutes and fill it very well. So what I want us to do, and this is, we're going to go till 5. So what I want us to do is we're going to have a shorter period, but we're going to break up into 4 groups. Could we have the next slide, please, Michelle? Okay. One of the main reasons we wanted to have this session, but we didn't want to have just IDRA resources, is because as an organization, the Intercultural Development Research Association, that we're celebrating our 50th year, I've been with IDRAs for 47. Our resources, we've been very carefully developing ever since we became active in helping create or support the MAS community of practice, which is, we're going to be mentioning a little bit later. As we were doing that, and those of us that have been advocates and working hard on this started in-house developing a base, a platform, so that now we have, I think, over 140 lessons organized in there. And what we see as these resources having common strands is that they're culturally sustaining, they're diverse, they're innovative in terms of how the approach, they're multisensory and using videos, that they'll have a positive impact on students, and we're continually going to be expanding and making it accessible. So what we're going to do is now we're going to be broken up into 4 groups randomly, and Gilbert will be with one, Lily will be with another, Araceli, and I'll be with a 4th one. And in those circles, we're each going to examine one lesson, and for the presenters, these are new lessons too. We're just going to look at them and just a taste of it. We were going to give it 30 minutes, but we're going to do less because we do need a large dialogue in a large group because there's so much being presented and we need dialogue. So in the small groups, we're going to each go, there's going to be 4 groups. We won't have 30 minutes. We're going to have 15 minutes in the small groups. So you're going to be checking out a particular lesson. We ourselves I chose the lessons, and I know that each of the presenters could have had a better lesson or one that they do, but we want to illustrate what we've got on board, so we're going to do it ourselves. And so, and in the room, you go to the Jamboard page of the number of your group. Are we all back? Gilbert, how did your group go? Who was with you? How many people were in your group, Gilbert?
I had the amazing, fierce, feminist maestras of MAS, the pioneers, Doctora Hernandez and also Maestra Cisneros.
All right, so Maestra Cisneros is with us. That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
It went pretty fast, but 90 minutes, we squeezed too much into the 90 minutes. I wanted to get a feel. Were you able to look at a lesson?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, then see, Araceli, how did it go in your group?
Yeah, good. Val and I had some good conversation and how we can tie it into like oral history projects also.
Who was with you, Araceli?
It's Dr. Valerie Martinez and
Our Lady of the Lake University. Yes. Valerie is with us. That's great. You know, one thing that wasn't noted very much in the city when we had all these festivities around Jovita, how much Our Lady of the Lake and how much Valerie had done in preparation for that, work her, you know what, off. And I don't think the media picked that up enough. And so I want to acknowledge Our Lady of the Lake University and Valerie's work for honoring Jovita from Laredo. Are you with us, Valerie?
Yes, gracias, Aurelio. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Dr. Christopher Carmona and I worked really hard, but you know, it's okay. It went well, and it was a great, successful event. So we're happy that we're able to put Olu back here. And I mean, Our Lady of the Lake has done so much for the university, for the community, right? Not just for the university, but the surrounding community. So I'm happy that we were able to represent Olu in that event. So thank you.
My President Emerita, Dr. Cuca Robledo Montesel at IDRA, she's still with us as an emerita in her emerita position. She was actually on the board for a while of Our Lady University. And I have recent, very strong memories. At Our Lady of the Lake, we had in 2018, the 50th anniversary of the 1968 hearings on the Mexican American with the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. And then a year later, we had the 50th anniversary of the walkouts, and Our Lady of the Lake was co-sponsor with UTSA of that. And also, Our Lady of the Lake was a great participant in our 50th anniversary of the La Sanidad Party last September. So again, that small university does a lot that supports what we're doing. So Dr. Saldaña, who was in your group?
So I was with Maria Soto Galindo, who is a retired assistant principal at Skyline High School in Dallas. And we were chatting in the chat box. But I did get to talk about the Si Se Puede lesson plan. Okay. And it is such a beautifully curated lesson plan that you can adapt, I think, even for high school students, even college students. You can modify it from 1 day to a week-long or 2-week lesson plan. But we were talking about MAS, and I was just telling Maria that Dallas actually has the highest enrollment of MAS in the state of Texas.
Isn't that ironic? When I go to the Valley, we're 99% of the population, and there's very few MAS classes going on in the Valley in South Texas.
Almost 4,000 students were enrolled in MAS at the high school level in Dallas last year.
We should honor
Maria. Maria played a role in recruiting students into the MAS class at her school. So big kudos. Big kudos.
Fabulous. And I'm hoping that we're certainly helping expand it in the San Antonio area, but we're hoping that the El Paso area starts having more classes, and certainly South Texas, because you know, there's so many cultural stories and things that come from South Texas, and yet they're not being taught in those classes.
Yeah. But it was a great lesson plan, you know, and it was fabulous.
So, Christy, are you with us?
I am, sir.
Okay, would you introduce yourself to the group, please?
Absolutely. I'm Christy Goodman. I am a director of communications at IDRA. I've been here 29 years. And
She was 12 years old when she joined us.
I have had the joy of working with Aurelio for all this time. It's awesome. And so, yes. So
tell us about this scene site that we've developed and we're illustrating today.
I will be happy to, and I will share screen too and let y'all see so it's not all abstract. But we created this website, the Southern Education Equity Network, a website to serve that for advocacy support for community and student groups. On this site, by the way, the URL is idrascene.org. The initials are on purpose about being seen. So we have resources here for advocacy. Let me just show you on this page. We have like infographics on how to meet with an elected official, how to deliver testimonies. Some of these are in Spanish also. If they're not, they will be soon. So we have lots of tips there, and a really strong feature is this on the right for the groups. We can create a group, and they can be private or not, and collaborate on advocacy or on education, classroom instruction and that sort of thing. So this is like a year and a half old. Our focus is on US South. And supporting community groups across the region, because
from Texas all the way to Florida. Yeah.
And then a little bit later, we added this new part. This is what I really wanted to show y'all. It's the School Resource Hub. I'm going to go straight. Oh, I should tell you first, we do have news alerts also on here. But let me go to the Resource Hub. We created this about a year and a half ago, and are continuing to grow the content. But the purpose, during the environment of classroom censorship, we know that students, parents, our families, teachers still want to be teaching truth and teaching history of all of our different communities. And so we wanted to provide resources for educators for that. So on this resource hub, we have our own lessons that we've created, but also many that are curated from different locations.
We have one from Lucero. Lucero is part of our community here in San Antonio, and there's at least one from Lucero.
So just to let you know, just on the hub, so we have lesson plans. We also have teaching tools, because there are some things where teacher may already have a lesson plan, but just needs a video to go with it or something of that sort. So we have teaching tools, and then of course, policy and advocacy news. And let me just take you to the lesson plan landing page.
We have, 140 lessons in there?
Something like that so far, and we're continuing to grow. And I'll just, sorry, it's taking me a little minute. Of course, today is the day my internet's not running slow. All right, so you'll see that we have like this lesson here. It gives you a little description, the main kind of types of contents that are there, vocab list, handouts, lesson plan, that kind of thing. The subjects it relates to and grade levels, and the source, because these that are curated, they're not actually sitting on our site. We link you to the sources site, and it gives you an idea of the length. And so it is, that's based on what whoever developed that lesson says the length is. And then over here, you can search. I want to look at topics here. So if you want to look at Mexican American Studies, it is here. Let me just show you, like, do you see it? It's supposed to be in alphabetical order. There it is, Mexican American Studies. So you can search and pull up lessons that have that as their keyword. Key term. So they're all here, free to use. Oh, I should say the other thing in the teaching tools are some webinars we've held on how to use the hub, and feedback we've gotten from teachers who have used some of the lessons and that sort of thing. So that's another type of tool for teachers that are here. And then I wanted to tell you about our the original lessons that we have. They're under this framework that we call America is Me, AIM for short. And what we've done is identify 5 critical intercultural skills that can be overlaid onto any lesson. So it's not specific to any state standards or school district standards. Of course, we started to do that, but actually there's so much variety across the country in standards. But a teacher can take this, select what intercultural skills to focus on, and then apply them to their lesson. And so each of the lessons we have here that are in the AIM framework, it identifies what those intercultural skills are. And then we have a set of lessons for secondary grades. And I'm going to come back and show you one of those first, but let me show you that we
Christy,
have...
let me just mention something.
Yes.
All the lessons have TEAC-like objectives in them, some that are not Texas-based, but you'll find that you have language that very closely approaches what the TEACs have in their language, because, you know, a classroom teacher will always want to share what are the TEACs, and so each lesson has that.
And so we have some that are for elementary that we're building on also. Yes, she can is that theme. And then I'm looking at the clock, so I don't want to take too much time, but let me just show you this one on the real world. This is a math lesson where, let me see if I ran out. Oh, I should say all the AIM lessons, we have added adaptations for bilingual classrooms and resources there. But this is what one of the original lessons looks like in terms of the description, the intercultural skills that relate to this one, and then information for the teacher and their tools. And then there are handouts for the students in a separate PDF, instructions for the teacher. This lesson, the groups you divide, of course there's more to it, but one of the things that happens is you divide your students into groups and give them a monthly salary. This one, right, you know, one of these circles here, and they have to build a budget, and there's a resource for them to do that and determine how they can, you know, what they can fit into that budget. And then they're given this chart that shows what that salary represents in terms of education level, which you're familiar with. You've seen those tables. Well, it also puts in, though, the added information about education level by race, ethnicity, and how that impacts income using federal data. And then there's guides here for having healthy, robust conversations about what that means. So that is just one lesson in the hub. I'm going to put the link to that landing page in the chat for you, and I'm happy to talk more. I'm looking at the clock, so I don't want to
yeah, we need to give Dr.
Yeah.
Saldana is going to present her.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you very much.
And we're always looking for suggestions.
Yes.
Of content.
Thank you. So, Lily, would you tell us a little bit about the UTSA programs and what you're specifically interested in inviting people to?
Sure. So since 2014, when the state board approved of the special topics class, my colleague, Dr. Queta Miranda, founded the Mexican American Studies Teachers Academy, which organizes a 1-week intensive for new and experienced Mexican American Studies teachers. The Academy is open to anyone who wants to learn about MAS, who wants to teach MAS. So we have sessions, you know, elementary school sessions, we have middle school sessions, we have high school sessions, and we're just so very, very fortunate that Maestra Araceli Manriquez and Maestro Gilbert Flores and La Doctora Cristina, who's here with us, Hernandez, and also Maestra Cisneros, that they have presented at the Academy as experienced teachers in MAS. We've also collaborated with IDRA and MATRI recently to organize teacher workshops and gatherings to support teachers in developing curriculum, but also creating a community of practice, right? Which is just a community of support where we get to exchange lesson plans, just our experiences in teaching MAS. And so we're really excited. Our 1-week institute in the summer is usually on the last week of June. So we don't have dates yet, but it will be at the end of June. We're hoping to have maybe a hybrid form. We used to have our academy face-to-face in person and then we transitioned to virtual. And so this summer we might have a combination of in-person, but also virtual for teachers from all over the state.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have an evaluation form. If you want to fill out evaluation of today's session. And we hope to actually develop, we're going to offer a full day, and that would be for a fee. We're going to project to see when that could happen soon. And to have the stuff we squeezed into 90 minutes, kind of each piece looked at more carefully with much more dialogue. Araceli, closing?
Reach out if you need anything. I'll put my email in the chat.
We're going to have a working group with the title of the workshop in the scene map. I just created it a couple of days ago. So you will be able to connect and invite others to connect with us to continue the dialogue on cultural chronicles. Lily?
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Michelle, any closing words? Thank you for all the technical support, Michelle.
Of course. And no, it was a wonderful session and I learned a lot.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.